The following program has been pre-recorded, so please don't call in at this time. If you wish to participate in the program, tune in at 5 p.m. every Wednesday for A Pause for Thought on Baton Rouge Community Radio. Good evening, fellow humans. This is Wayne Parker with A Pause for Thought here on Baton Rouge Community Radio. 96.9 FM here in Baton Rouge. Yes, indeed, everybody. We're here in the palatial studios of 96.9 WHYR Baton Rouge Community Radio coming to you. And we've got a great show ahead. By we, I mean Lang Baker and me. And I want to remind everybody that... Oh, good evening, Lang.
Howdy, Wayne.
You can see I'm energized over tonight's topic. But this is a live call-in show. Just a reminder to the listeners and, of course, all the multitudes of new listeners we have tonight. 343-9927 is the number to call. 343-9927 is the number to call to share your insights, thoughts, ask questions on the topic of the evening. And I'm going to give everyone a teaser, Lang, about what the topic is tonight. Okay?
Take it away.
It's in the form of a little song that actually goes back to a commercial jingle back in the 80s, I think. My baloney has a first name, it's E-D-D-I-E. My baloney has a second name, it's R-I-S Pony. Okay, I'm done. And so, yeah, we're going to talk tonight about the gubernatorial elections and just compare the two candidates, John Bel Edwards, the Democrat incumbent, and Eddie Rispone, or Baloney Rispone, who is running against him as a businessman, outsider, Trump mini-me, I guess, you know. That's what he wants to be anyway. And I started out, Lang, looking at the two candidates' websites. And I went to John Bel Edwards' website, and of course he had the usual, hi, how are you, this is me, come get to know me, that kind of thing. And of course, send me money, you know, support, blah, blah, blah. But he also had a tab on his website that was titled Priorities. And in that tab, he listed state budget, health care, economy, criminal justice reform, education, taxes, veterans, and coastal protection and restoration. And of course, in each one, he explained his concerns about them, why he's concerned, and what he proposes to do with it and everything, if he can get the Republican legislature to go along with saving the state and everything. But then I went to Eddie Rispone's website. And, well, then there's the home page. And on the home page, there is a close-up of Rispone in camos pulling the string of a bow, a hunting bow. What that has to do with being a governor, I have no idea, but that's what the picture showed. And it had three words: conservative, outsider, businessman. And so I went to the Meet Eddie tab on his website.
Okay.
And basically it was a biography that boils down to, I'm a good Christian, I'm a businessman, and I'll make everybody better off. Oh, and he has lots of children and grandchildren, too. That was important. So then he had a tab called Media Center. And I went to there, and it had two sub-tabs. One was latest videos, and the other was latest photos. And, of course, the latest videos were his campaign commercials, or they were self-serving excerpts from interviews he's done with people, you know, one-on-one. No interviews with any candidate or anything, certainly not John Bel Edwards, but he, you know, that. And then the latest photos were same thing, you know, pictures of him and his family, blah, blah, you know, all that stuff. But then there was in the news, okay, here I'll get some substance, I'm thinking, right? And it's a bunch of newspaper articles and brief television interviews. That's it, in the news, yeah, okay. And then, of course, endorse Eddie. So comparing the two candidates,
So did you endorse Eddie while you were on that page?
I didn't even click on it.
I see.
I mean, I already knew how I felt about everything, and I won't discuss that here since we're not allowed to promote candidates. But
yeah, I was just inquiring whether you took any action on that page.
I might have sent some advice to him. I didn't think about that, but there's
Well,
still time.
maybe we should promote that.
Yeah.
Go onto that
might-
page and give him some advice.
Make a few comments, yes. And so basically, according to Rispone's website, he's nothing more than a loud horn. And, I forgot to mention before we kick this off tonight, I did have an exclusive interview with Rispone. And I'm going to play some excerpts tonight that are applicable to the things we're going to be talking about. And I'd like you to hear this first one here from candidate Rispone.
Is that the question or the answer?
That was him. I don't know what he was saying, but it sounds like everything he said so far on TV, as far as I know.
I
But
see.
anyway, so that's what he had to say about his website. So, what have you found in looking up between the candidates?
Well, I found his website also uninformative about his positions, and then there's been a lot in the news about his failure to participate in forums. There were a number of forums during the primary that he refused to attend or declined to attend. And I guess tonight is the only, assuming he shows up, is the only event that he has agreed to appear with another candidate, where he and John Bell Edwards will be on a debate for, I believe, 1 hour on TV tonight around 7 o'clock.
Yeah, and they're each going to get to ask each other questions and whatnot, and I just hope that Edwards' people are just laying for him. They're prepared for this campaign. I think they knew what to expect ahead of time because of Rispone's relationship with Lane Grigsby and his past. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, there was an in-depth front-page story on the Sunday Advocate about the role that Lane Grigsby's been playing since back in the 80s. It said he's been running negative ads filled with falsehoods to advance his agenda. But it was describing him as someone who refers to stay behind the scenes, and he described himself as the kingmaker in one quote there.
And wasn't he known for putting out misleading or outright lying?
They gave a
political
number
ads?
of examples of those through the years, yeah. And it's interesting. They said, I think 4 dozen people for this article, but that the spokesperson they contacted with the Rispone campaign declined to answer any questions. And a number of people who had been the targets of negative ads through the years also did not want to comment on the facts that were reported about what had happened during those campaigns, which is kind of curious.
Yeah, that's interesting. Wonder if some of Lane Grigsby's generosity had flown, slithered into their direction or something. I don't know.
Well, the most recent thing that came out was with one of the state Senate races here, where he was proposing to support Foyle for a judgeship if he would drop out of the race, which, according to the reporting I read, this was a message to have been passed through former Senator Claytor, whose seat Foyle and Carter were running for.
Right.
And Claytor declined to pass it on, supposedly because it was illegal proposition that he was making.
Yeah, and Foyle turned it down, I think.
Well, it hadn't even gotten
hadn't
even
that
gotten
far?
to
Okay.
him because Claytor wouldn't pass it on. That was in the news about it
Okay.
anyway.
Well, that's
So that was some evidence of an attempt by Grigsby to grant a favor in exchange for.
Basically trying to undermine the democratic process, which is something that was one of the leaders of the St. George movement, the pro-St. George movement, complained about with the state government and all, or the parish government, that they were undermining the democratic process.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if we want to go down that path, but there was an interesting observation about the elections in St. George. The people affected by it, which were the population of the entire parish, were not allowed to vote on it, whereas the constitutional amendment for New Orleans, the entire state got to vote on that. And in New Orleans, it carried by a 2-to-1 margin, but the rest of the state voted it down and wouldn't let the people in New Orleans get what they wanted.
Right. Yeah, and
so it was the exact opposite.
Right.
People outside the area not affected control that decision, and people outside the area here affected by it weren't allowed to participate.
Yeah, that's the case with St. George.
So,
yeah, and I'm talking about mainly the complaint that they made about. I lost the word. They're, doing an end around on the democratic process,
yeah.
And that's what Lane Grigsby has been doing.
Yeah, well, that's what false advertising in the
that certainly
campaigns is about, is circumventing the democratic process by giving people bad information so they can't make good decisions because they don't have the truth of the matter.
Not just that they can't make good decisions, they'll make a bad decision, or at least they'll make a decision that seems good to them that is really, based on
false information.
Yes. Okay, so go ahead.
I was just going to say, which brings around to one of the ads that Rispone has come out with. One of them was saying that unemployment has gone up under
John Bell
Edwards, where this was reported in the Bayou Brief, I believe. And in the same reporting there, they showed some tweets that came out of the White House during the same time that Rispone was claiming this, and the White House was claiming in advance of Trump coming to Louisiana how under Trump, Louisiana's employment had improved.
That's funny. He was coming down here to promote Baloney Rispone, and yet he ends up promoting himself and undercutting Rispone, presuming that any of the people at that rally really paid attention to those
exactly,
things.
yes.
So we don't know.
Deal.
Anyway, you're listening to Wayne Parker and Lang Baker here on A Pause for Thought. 343-9927 is the number to call, 343-9927. Give us a shout. We're discussing the two gubernatorial candidates here in Louisiana, John Bell Edwards, the incumbent, and Eddie Rispone, businessman, outsider, conservative.
Right. And this Sunday article about the role Lane Grigsby's been playing in Louisiana politics since the 80s was one of the things they reported on there was a recent, well, I don't know how recent, I don't remember the date, it was back some time ago when Lane Grigsby had a breakfast meeting with John Bell Edwards and was laying down what he wanted out of John Bell Edwards. And when John Bell Edwards didn't agree, Grigsby stormed out saying he'd have to find another candidate to run for governor.
Right, he had to find.
And so then there was also reported like he looked around, was trying to get a candidate, and they couldn't get anybody with, like Senator Kennedy or any of the other big names. So they settled on Rispone, who was an old business pal from Grigsby.
He actually stepped up. He said, "Yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Nobody else will. I'll do it." Okay.
Yeah. And so some people speculate, well, that's why Rispone doesn't have anything to say about his plans because he doesn't really have any plans, and the plans are Grigsby's plans, which part of what he was wanting John Bell Edwards to sign on to was calling a constitutional convention, and part of what they want out of the constitutional convention is to change the Constitution so that we don't have so much funding dedicated to education and health care in the state. And so once the constitutional dedication for those purposes is removed, then all that money's available to siphon off to other purposes and leave.
But Rispone never said that. It was Lane Grigsby.
No, this was Grigsby who claims to be the kingmaker and found his candidate in Rispone.
Yeah,
he found the person to run.
He found the guy that he can pull the strings on, so to speak, like a marionette. But yeah, and he missed, Rispone himself missed a lot of forums during the primaries, and he's missing everyone basically now except for the one he's required legally to engage in, which is the one that's tonight. By the way, I want you to record that for me because I'm not going to be home all evening.
I don't expect to be home either.
Oh, bummer. Well, I'm sure there'll be somebody posting it on YouTube or something later on. Okay, well, perhaps Rispone is the emptiness of his website is why he's been missing all of these forums, because he has nothing to say. But another point I wanted to address was, and that's the first thing he said that caught my eye a ways back during the primary, or during the primaries, that he wants to be just like Trump. He promises to stand up and support all of Donald Trump's policies. And my first thought was, what policies? I mean, Trump hasn't a clue. He never had a plan. He didn't even have a transition team set up for in case he won the election. He's just totally unprepared. And this is what Rispone, wants to give us. He says he'll support all of Trump's policies. Well, what are some of the things that Trump has done? He's wrecked current and future soybean business in the United States with his punitive trade tariffs. He's unilaterally abandoned the Iran nuclear deal, putting us at odds with our allies, destabilizing the Middle East, and prompting Iran to resume enriching uranium for a future bomb. He embarrassed India's prime minister by spontaneously and dishonestly claiming he'd been asked by India's government to mediate the Kashmir-India conflict. He could have started a war over that just by that one stupid comment. But, he recently abandoned our Kurdish allies in Syria, leaving a power vacuum that Russia and Iran are only too eager to fill, destroying our credibility with our allies and putting neighboring countries at risk, to say nothing of the Kurdish fighters that he abandoned. He canceled the North American Free Trade Agreement and came up with an agreement that is essentially the same, but with a different name. And this has yet to even be ratified by the Senate. And, of course, he has already ballooned the U.S. government's debt by over $1 trillion, and it's expected to continue going up for the same amount for the next several years. And this is the kind of thing that Eddie Rispone apparently wants to bring to Louisiana.
Yeah, and Ralph Nader could add to that list. On this station carries the Ralph Nader Radio Hour on Monday mornings at 9 o'clock, right after Democracy Now! I guess it's at 8 o'clock right after Democracy Now! Democracy Now! 7 to 8, and Ralph Nader Hour comes on at 8 o'clock on Mondays. And he ran down a list of things in a recent show. I forget whether it was this past Monday or the Monday before. And he pointed out that part of what Trump's doing is reducing the controls over pollution from the coal industry, removing the federal cops that are watching over credit card industries' corruption or dishonesty, weakening food safety laws, taking away free lunches from hundreds of thousands of people. He's not recalling dangerous pharmaceuticals. He hasn't done anything to fulfill his promise to bring down drug prices, which are the highest in the world.
And he promised to do something about that, as I recall.
He promised
but
all kinds of things.
Let's not forget, now, we're not talking about Trump here. We're talking about Rispone.
But Rispone said he wants to be just like Trump. So if this is what Trump's been doing, then is this what Rispone's saying he wants to do as well?
That's why I said that line.
Yeah. So, plus, as Ralph Nader pointed out, and Trump is a serial sexual predator, that 45 more women have come forward with detailed examples of how he's assaulted them.
Well,
And part of what Rispone did in his primary campaign against Abraham was criticize Abraham for having said something critical about Trump's
peccadillos.
grabbing women.
Yeah. Really, imagine that. Criticizing him for saying something about that. Well, that's not loyal, and loyalty apparently to your guy is all the rage on that segment of the electorate, apparently.
And the last two things on Ralph Nader's list were Trump's suggestion of a civil war if he's not reelected, and spending money that Congress has not appropriated, like for his wall.
Trying to use the defense money to build his wall, which, if he gets away with that, well, and again, putting it back on Baloney Rispone, that's what he would do here. He would shift money around, and kind of that's what he wants to do, or what Lane Grigsby wants to do with the Constitutional Convention, is take money or take protections away from certain programs that are now constitutionally protected in the state, so that he can rob them of money and replace them with private things, private entities.
Yeah, one of the campaigns Grigsby was behind back in 2015 was to shift the control of Bessie over to the charter industry.
Yes, that's right. And
he put lots of money into those races and ran some false ads in some of those races, according to this news story that was in the Sunday Advocate.
Yeah, and presumably Rispone, supports all that. Doesn't Rispone, hasn't he come out and said he wants to consolidate parish governments?
That was part of what Grigsby wanted in his
out
of his constitutional convention.
Now, Rispone, before he became a candidate, fought tooth and nail against the ITEP, the tax exemption program. He fought against changing it and allowing local school boards to get a say in whether or not these big corporations got tax exemptions. He fought that then, and I think that's the only reason he has given for why he wants to call a constitutional convention, just for that one issue. And, of course, we know, and now that I think of it, it didn't take a constitutional, didn't take a constitutional amendment to change the law to give local control to the school board, so why would there be a constitutional convention to put it back the way it was?
Right, and yeah,
unless maybe there were some other reasons why he wants to have the constitutional convention.
Yeah, well, according to that article, there were several reasons that Grigsby had for wanting a constitutional convention.
Oh yeah, I know.
Because if you just want to change one thing, you can do that through a constitutional amendment. It doesn't have to go to a whole convention. Conventions to rewrite the entire Constitution.
Good point. Good point. Sorry.
And back on your point about the ITEP, it's right now, as I understand it, it's not even in the statutes. It's just something through the executive order that says that this is the process we use in moving forward on an application. Is it goes for a sign-off by the local taxing authorities, including school districts, that would be affected, that their budgets would be affected if the exemption is granted.
Right. But anyway, I want to remind the listeners you're listening to Wayne Parker and Lang Baker here on A Pause for Thought. 343-9927. If you'd like to give us a call, 343-9927. We're discussing the two gubernatorial candidates, John Bell Edwards and Baloney Rispone. 343-9927 is the number to call. Oh, let's see, Lang. He and Trump also have been saying that John Bell Edwards has trashed the Louisiana economy. The tax and spend liberal, the old line, which always seems to work with certain groups of people. He trashed the economy. And I did some checking on that, and I saw an article in the May 1st Baton Rouge Business Report that has a headline, Louisiana gross domestic product grew 1.1% in 2018, below the national average. And I thought, well, bummer, But then I read further down through the article, and it says here that while Louisiana's economy grew slower than most other states in 2018, the 1.1% uptick is still a far better showing than previous years. And it says Louisiana's economy actually shrank slightly in 2015 and 2016, which were the two last years of Bobby Jindal's administration.
Yeah. So I wonder whether Rispone's campaign should be labeled Jindal 2.0 or Jindal 0.5.
Yeah, or Trump whatever. Trump mood number 42.
Yeah.
Or Trump indignant reaction number 28 or something. I don't know. But they go on to state here, and these are numbers provided by the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis. But this goes on to state that the state's gross domestic product began to climb back up in 2017 during the first year of John Bell Edwards, the guy that is apparently, supposedly crushing Louisiana's economy with a 0.1% growth rate, and then I believe it's gone up. It went up last year too, just at the 1.1%. So we're actually improving from the Jindal mess, and Rispone says, "Oh, wait, I want to take us back to that," is what he's telling us. Industries that saw, and this is from the same article, industries that saw the most growth in Louisiana in 2018 were wholesale trade, real estate, and professional, scientific, and technical services. I mean, that's pretty good. mining, quarrying, and oil and gas extractions fell by 0.1% last year. But then again, the economy last year largely contracted because of Trump's trade policies, which, of course, Eddie Rispone would probably impose here in Louisiana if he could constitutionally. And there's another article here, actually, is a report from Louisiana Economic Development that talks about, it carries the title, Louisiana ranks number 2 in the South for economic development results. And it states that today, which was July 3rd, Southern Business and Development magazine ranked Louisiana number 2 for securing the best economic development performance in the South on a per capita basis. And this is the 11th year in a row that Louisiana has ranked either number 1 or number 2. So apparently the state is doing fairly well relative to other states, and certainly relative to the way it was doing during the Jindal operation. And this was actually... Oh, go ahead, Lang.
Well, the time period you cited goes back through the Jindal years as well.
Yeah.
It was ranking number 1 or number 2 back that many years.
Correct. And but we were still hurting then too, so maybe this is not... Thank you for pointing that out, but maybe that's not an indication of any big change in success. But, our gross domestic product certainly is. And that growth has occurred in spite of the decline in America's economy with Trump's glorious economic policies. But I did talk to Eddie Rispone about some of the economic issues that he addressed, and this is what he had to say about it. Anyway, almost sounds like a one-trick pony, huh? But
can we get a translator in here?
One-trick pony Rispone. Hey,
all right.
I'm a poet and didn't realize it. Anyhow, we got a few minutes left, Lang. Is there anything else you want to throw at the candidates or their financial backers?
Well, the one issue where there's no detail, but there's a one-liner, is that Rispone said he wants to freeze Medicaid enrollment, which would have a devastating effect because there are lots of people that cycle in and out of that as they lose jobs and get jobs and lose jobs and get jobs. And so it's like a one-way door. You go out, but then you can't get back in when you need it again. And Arizona had tried this thing of putting a freeze on it, and they had to reverse course because the number of people under the program dropped by 70%, and they saw, hey, this just isn't going to serve the people. But that's so Rispone hadn't given the details. Another thing is, he said the infrastructure's bad. We need to fix the roads, but we also we need to cut taxes. And so it's like, well, where are you going to get the money to fix the roads?
And here again, that's exactly what Trump would do. He would cut taxes and increase spending, which is what he did.
But that's at the federal government. You can do that because you can run a deficit. With the state,
apparently,
you can't. You'd have to go raid the schools if you can amend the Constitution so the school money can't.
Okay,
isn't dedicated.
Well,
anymore,
at least we'd have better roads for people to go to the schools that no longer exist, or whatever.
Whatever,
but I'm sure he'll make something good come out of it. Oh, let's see here. I'm not sure what else to say. I'm looking at some of my notes here, but yeah, his whole campaign to be just like Trump, really, it's going to work. I think. I'm afraid. I mean, look what Trump did. His campaign was nothing but promises to do things that he never had a plan to explain how he was going to do them. And Rispone doesn't even have promises.
Yeah, he just says, vote for me, I like Trump.
Yeah, vote for me, I'm just like Trump. I'll be just like him. He's trying to ride his coattails.
Well, the one thing that I read somewhere, and then I couldn't find it again when I tried to track down my source, was something about proposing a flat tax.
Yeah.
And I had looked at some figures a few years ago, and this was like in 2014, 2015, looking at some data from the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, where they broke down by different income groups within the state how much they paid as a percentage of their income on different taxes, the sales tax, your property tax, your income tax, and all this. And actually, a flat tax would be, if it were truly flat tax, you would eliminate the sales tax because that's definitely not a flat tax.
Right.
And so you'd have just an income tax. And actually, the taxes for the bottom 60%, if you leveled it out where everybody was paying like 8.1%, which is what like between 60 and 80%, the upper, the four out of the 5 groups of 20% each. If you leveled it at their tax rate, the bottom 60% would get a tax reduction, and the bottom 20% would get a tax increase, and you would increase the total revenue by over 20%.
Well, maybe that would compensate for them, all those people losing Medicaid, right? Just kidding, but really, you know, those people don't vote anyway, do they? And wasn't it the reason why?
That's one of the criticisms of why the Republicans ignore the impact on the poor people,
right,
is that the poor people don't vote.
And they don't care about them. Anyway.
Yeah, they don't have to care about them because they don't vote.
Right. Okay, Lang, we've got to go. You've been listening to Wayne Parker and Lang Baker here on A Pause for Thought. I've been having fun talking about the gubernatorial candidates. We got to go now. You have a good night.